Everyone in Willow Street knew Mr. Harold Grimes as the angry landlord. He owned 3 old apartment buildings, all standing shoulder to shoulder like tired soldiers from another era. The paint peeled from the walls, the staircases creaked with every step, and the radiators hissed like angry cats in winter. But none of these things frightened the tenants as much as Mr. Grimes himself. He was a tall, thin man with sharp eyes and a permanent frown carved into his face. His voice always sounded like a door slamming shut, and his footsteps echoed through the halls like a warning. Whenever rent day came, people double-checked their doors and counted their money twice. "Late rent means late consequences," he would shout, banging his cane against the floor. No one ever saw him smile. Among the tenants lived a young woman named Emily Carter. She was a schoolteacher, kind-hearted and quiet, and she lived in the smallest apartment on the top floor. Emily paid her rent on time whenever she could, but life had not been gentle with her. Her father had passed away the previous year, leaving her with debts she was still struggling to pay. One cold November month, her school delayed salaries due to administrative problems. Emily waited anxiously, checking her bank account every day. When rent day arrived, she was short by $100. Her hands trembled as she knocked on Mr. Grimes' office door. "What do you want?" his harsh voice barked from inside. Emily swallowed and stepped in. "Sir, I wanted to explain. My salary is delayed. I can pay the full rent next week. I just need a little time." Mr. Grimes stared at her as if she had insulted him personally. "No excuses," he snapped. "Rules are rules. If you can't pay, you leave." Tears filled Emily's eyes. "Please," she said softly, "I've never been late before." But Mr. Grimes had already turned away. "1 week," he said coldly. "After that, you're out." Emily left the office feeling crushed. That night, she sat in her dim apartment, wrapped in a blanket, wondering where she would go if she was forced to leave. She had no relatives nearby and very little savings. What no one in the building knew was that Mr. Grimes, despite his anger, carried a heavy past of his own. Years earlier, he had been a gentleman with a family. His wife, Margaret, used to say he had the kindest heart she'd ever known. They had owned a small bakery together, and their laughter once filled their home. Then, tragedy struck. A fire broke out in the bakery late one night. Margaret was inside, closing up. She never made it out. The bakery burned down, and with it, Mr. Grimes' happiness. Insurance companies delayed payments, creditors showed no mercy, and he lost everything he loved. The world, in his eyes, had shown him no kindness, so he returned none. The following week, a heavy snowstorm hit the city. Roads were blocked, buses stopped running, and schools closed. Emily tried desperately to find temporary work, but everything was shut down. On the 7th day, Mr. Grimes climbed the stairs to her apartment, his cane striking each step like a countdown. Emily opens the door slowly. "Sir, please," she said. "I still don't have it, but I promise." "Enough," he interrupted. "Pack your things." Just then, a loud crash echoed from the floor below. One of the elderly tenants, Mrs. Lewis, had slipped on the icy stairs and fallen. Emily rushed past Mr. Grimes without hesitation. She knelt beside Mrs. Lewis, holding her hand and calling for help. She wrapped her own scarf around the old woman's shoulders, whispering comforting words while waiting for the ambulance. Mr. Grimes stood frozen, watching. He remembered another woman years ago comforting frightened customers during the bakery fire, his Margaret. The ambulance arrived, and Mrs. Lewis was taken to the hospital. Emily stayed with her until a neighbor came to help. When she returned upstairs, she found Mr. Grimes still standing there, his anger replaced by something unfamiliar. Silence filled the hallway. You didn't have to help her, he said quietly. Emily looked at him, surprised by the change in his tone. She needed help, she replied. That's reason enough. Mr. Grimes nodded slowly. For the first time in years, his chest felt heavy, not with anger, but with regret. The next morning, Emily found a letter slipped under her door. Miss Carter, your rent is forgiven for this month. Take the time you need. Consider it a second chance for both of us. H. Grimes. Emily read the letter twice, hardly believing it. From that day on, things began to change. Mr. Grimes started fixing broken lights and repairing leaky pipes. He spoke less harshly and even helped carry groceries for older tenants. Slowly, the building felt warmer, not because of the radiators, but because of something unseen. People stopped calling him the angry landlord. They called him Mr. Grimes, a man who had learned, at last, that kindness could rebuild what anger had destroyed. And in the quiet moments, when he passed Emily in the hallway, he would nod, and sometimes, just sometimes, he would smile. Winter slowly loosened its grip on Willow Street, and with it, the cold distance that had once ruled Mr. Grimes's buildings. The snow melted, the days grew longer, and something unexpected began to bloom inside the old landlord, a quiet desire to make things right. Mr. Grimes still woke up early every morning, but instead of sitting alone in his dark office, he walked through the building halls. He listened to the pipes, to the footsteps, to the lives happening around him. For the first time, he noticed how thin the walls were, how laughter echoed differently than anger. Emily noticed the change too. One afternoon, she returned from school carrying a stack of papers to grade. As she struggled to unlock her door, the papers slipped from her arms and scattered across the floor. "Careful," a voice said. She looked up, startled, to see Mr. Grimes bending down, slowly gathering the papers with his stiff hands. "Thank you, sir," Emily said gently. He cleared his throat. "You teach children, don't you?" "Yes, 3rd grade." He nodded. "That's important work." The words sounded strange coming from him, but they were sincere. Emily smiled, and for a brief moment, Mr. Grimes felt something he hadn't felt in years: pride, not control. As weeks passed, the tenants began to speak more freely around him. Mrs. Lewis returned from the hospital and personally thanked Emily in front of everyone. She also thanked Mr. Grimes for installing handrails on the stairs, something he had ignored for years. "You're changing, Harold," she said kindly. He didn't deny it. But change is never simple. One evening, Mr. Grimes received a letter that reopened old wounds. A large property company wanted to buy his buildings. The offer was tempting, enough money to live comfortably for the rest of his life, but there was a condition: all tenants would be evicted within 2 months. Renovations would begin immediately. Mr. Grimes sat alone in his office, staring at the letter. The old version of himself would have signed without hesitation. Business was business. Survival came first. Yet now, faces filled his mind. Emily, Mrs. Lewis, the young couple downstairs saving for their first child. These people weren't just tenants anymore. They were stories, struggles, and second chances. The next day, rumors spread quickly. "They're selling the building," someone whispered on the stairs. Emily felt her heart sink. She couldn't afford to move again. Just when life felt stable, the ground beneath her seemed ready to crumble. That evening, she knocked on Mr. Grimes's door once more, this time not in fear, but in concern. "Sir," she said softly, "is it true?" He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Yes, I received an offer. And will we have to leave?" Mr. Grimes exhaled deeply. "That depends." Emily nodded. "I understand. It's your property." After she left, her words echoed in his mind. I understand. No anger, no blame, just trust. That night, Mr. Grimes barely slept. He dreamed of the bakery fire again, but this time, instead of flames, he saw doors closing, faces turning away, loneliness stretching endlessly. In the morning, he made his decision. He called a meeting in the courtyard. Tenants gathered nervously, whispering among themselves. Mr. Grimes stood before them, gripping his cane. I won't sell, he said firmly. These buildings are your homes, and I won't take that from you. A stunned silence followed, then relief, applause, and even tears. Emily felt her eyes fill with emotion. For the first time, she saw Mr. Grimes not as a landlord, but as a man who had chosen compassion over profit. Later that day, Emily found another note on her door. Thank you for reminding me what matters. H. Grimes. And as spring arrived, Willow Street no longer remembered him as the angry landlord, but as the man who found his heart again when he least expected it. Spring brought color back to Willow Street. Flowers bloomed along the cracked sidewalks, children played in the courtyard again, and the building, once heavy with silence, felt alive. But the biggest change was not in the walls or windows, it was in Mr. Harold Grimes. Though he had refused to sell the property, the financial pressure did not disappear. Repairs cost money, taxes increased, and the income from rent barely covered expenses. Some nights, Mr. Grimes sat alone in his office, staring at old bills and faded photographs of his wife, Margaret. You'd say I'm doing the right thing, but doing right is expensive. A few days later, Mr. Grimes collapsed while fixing a broken pipe in the basement. The pain in his chest was sharp and unforgiving. Emily, returning from school, heard the noise and rushed downstairs. "Mr. Grimes!" she cried. An ambulance was called immediately. As he was taken away, the tenants stood together in fear.